There's one thing couples neglect that slowly kills connection. I mean, you can live, sleep, do life together and not be truly intimate. So in today's episode, we're breaking down what happens when you stop treating intimacy as an afterthought and start making it your foundation. Welcome to the Campbell and Amanda podcast. My name is Campbell.
And my name is Amanda.
Yes, and today, honey, we're going to talk about intimacy.
Intimacy.
I love that. And I think let's start off by just defining what intimacy is. And I want us to take our time to define this and really break it down for everybody, because I think there are a lot of misconceptions when it comes to intimacy.
Yeah, intimacy, people think immediately a sexual relationship.
Exactly.
But intimacy is really the experience of being fully known, deeply accepted, and emotionally safe with another person.
Okay, that's huge. So let's break it down. The experience of being fully known. Mm-hmm. What does that mean for you?
I think it's multi-layered.
Okay.
So obviously, if you're fully known in the biblical sense,
okay.
you've been sexually connected, and you've been known. But also, I think you know what makes me tick, what values I have, and I am. What's the word? I guess I would say I am loved because of who I am, not because of what I bring.
Exactly. For me, to be fully known means that there is no part of me that I'm hiding.
Or withholding.
I'm fully transparent with you. I am not afraid of being judged by you, to be fully known. Quirks, weaknesses, strengths, fears, everything.
Yeah.
So intimacy is more than that physical connection that you have. It really goes deeper. And I think it feeds into the next part of the definition, to be deeply accepted.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, emotionally safe, it feeds into the other two layers of the definition, because you said, you don't have a fear of judgment, you're emotionally safe because you're not afraid that I'm going to start picking your moves apart, or your decisions apart, or your judgment calls apart, or, that I'm going to believe in you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I know people have problems building intimacy. And don't get us wrong, friends. In our opinion, intimacy takes time to develop, because it is developed through really 4 layers or 4 stages. They're not linear stages. I try and think of them as cyclical, as a cycle. So it is built through vulnerability first, presence, trust, and mutual pursuit.
Can I give an example?
Yeah, go ahead.
So when we were first married, we both knew that we
What
were...
do you mean first married? As if we got married.
When we were married at the beginning of our marriage.
Okay, there we go.
When we were first in ministry together.
What does that mean? Ministry together. For those of
preaching and teaching and leading people in the church. We knew that we were both musicians coming into our marriage, but we were trained differently.
Gotcha.
And you were self-taught primarily, and you somebody who played music by ear. I went to school, college for music. I read music. And so there was a bit of like the struggle, in my opinion, probably more so on my part, I don't know, this internal struggle of competition, so to say, because I didn't at that point feel like I was valued as an equal somehow. Because we were trained differently. And so the gifts that we brought to our team were different. And so we had to learn how to be secure in those gifts, and to how to compromise and find balance, and to complement each other.
Yeah. And I think the vulnerability is so huge, because vulnerability is really getting into that space where you literally open your heart and remove the armor and say, this is who I am. Take me or leave me, accept me, judge me, or whatever, but this is who I am. So that level of vulnerability, when practiced consistently, And when it is practiced within an atmosphere of emotional safety, begins to build that intimacy with your partner.
Right. And if you don't allow yourselves to be vulnerable and express what I'm expressing now, I felt inferior, or I felt this way, then you're not safe. You don't feel safe. You are in competition and you do feel judged. You could easily be heading in the same direction on a mutual pursuit in life, but here you are competing at something you should be partnering up in.
Exactly. I never felt that way, by the way. For me, it was always, I always felt like we were gifted, and are still gifted differently. Like you're saying, I was not a professional musician, I was self-taught. So for me, it was always, I wasn't intimidated. But especially with you, for me, it wasn't about any of that, So it's just interesting that two people can be in their relationship and have two different experiences just based on how they're...
Well, I think it goes to identity, because I did put a lot of my identity in my musicianship, because, it was something that I was good at. It was something that helped me to overcome a lot of things in my life. It also brought me out of the socioeconomic situation I was in, because I was able to go to college due to music and get a degree. And, you start identifying yourself with this label. So I think that for me, it was a little bit harder because you weren't trained. And so you were making strong, confident comments.
No shortage of confidence,
very
I guess.
easily redirecting or telling me to do something different as the song leader.
Yeah, like you're not even trained, bro. What's up with that?
But this is a normal thing, and it could be within finding your role within the household. Maybe you're both equally strong at finances, or maybe you're both equally strong at working with your hands, fixing things in the house. So you're having to find a way to be safe and know that you are and vulnerable with each other, to know that what you bring is equally valuable.
Exactly. And when you become more vulnerable in the relationship, your intimacy grows. And the other part of building intimacy is presence. And by presence, we don't just mean be in the same room. We mean that you are fully present and in the moment. And this is one area I struggled with, because my mind can be in several places all at once, and being fully present, whether it was, especially for a conversation, that you needed me to be fully present and attentive and responsive, that was something that I had to learn over time, because when you're speaking, I'm either formulating a reply or I'm trying to come up with a solution to your dilemma. And when you're doing that, you're not fully present with a person, and that has taken me a lot of time to kind of master and quiet my thoughts and be in the room and be with the person, not thinking about the past or the future, but just being with somebody and fully engaged in the conversation.
And it's unfair to ask somebody to do that all the time. So in our situation, you got to the point where you would have to say to me, let's make it, not necessarily make an appointment, but I'm watching a game. I'm not going to be fully present,
Exactly.
So I had to be mindful of there's a time and a place for us to have deeper conversations, and let's figure out when that is so we can make it happen and everybody can be present.
Yes. And of course, when you do this, when you are vulnerable and when you're present, naturally trust begins to build. And remember, friends, we are still talking and building towards intimacy, right? This is beyond the physical. This is real intimacy. So there's vulnerability, there is undivided attention and presence, which builds trust, right? And then intimacy is also mutual pursuit. Meaning that, I'm doing my part to pursue you, not just in the physical sense, but making sure that I am sending all the right signals to you and meaning everything that I say and do to let you know that you are that important person in my life. Yeah.
And it should be mutual. So recently I had a colleague say that he had to say to this girl that he had been dating, if you're going to call me and vent, and then I'm not going to have a chance to talk and share my day with you, then let's not do this today. Like, because it had built to the point where they weren't equally present for each other when they were like sharing about their day, and it was one-sided, he felt. And honestly, the relationship stopped there because there wasn't a mutual pursuit.
Exactly. So that's how you build intimacy, vulnerability, presence, trust, mutual pursuit. And now there are 3 types of intimacy. And I want us to kind of briefly talk about this and dive in a little bit because it's super important, especially for us. We look at life multidimensionally, you know. So the first level or first type of intimacy is emotional intimacy. This is where you're sharing your feelings, you're sharing your fears, you're sharing your dreams, and you're sharing your needs.
And then the second type is...
do you want to dive any more into the emotional part? Or you?
I mean, we can.
I mean, you don't have to.
We can.
I'm just saying, you don't have anything else to say about it.
Sure. I mean, emotionally, this can be difficult for men.
Oh, yes.
I would say this can be difficult for men. To share feelings, and oftentimes I would have to say early in the relationship we were dating long distance, so we just had phone conversation, and I would say, and it carried into our marriage, I would say, you're being vague, you're ambiguous, what does that mean? You know, so drawing out more detail, not answering questions with yes or no, but actually being willing to go deeper about how you're feeling, describe how the day was, you know, your interactions with others, what frustrated you, what you were grateful for, what happened, what made you happy.
Yes, I feel happy because, you know, and that helped me, you know, just adding a reason for the feeling I have just described. So if I say, I feel happy, okay, what does that even mean? You know, so I feel happy because this and this happened. And over time, that helped me to become more, it helped me just to express my feelings in a more productive way over time, you know, and that goes for fears as well. I'm afraid because, you know, and it sounds very rudimentary, very foundational, but a lot of men, even till today, I have friends that don't know how to express their feelings to their significant other. And I'm like, it's become a little bit easier for me. And that's why we're working on this resource that really helps men especially communicate how they feel, their feelings, even their dreams. You know, and I know when it comes to dreams, I'm a big thinker. I think of the future. And sometimes that was challenging to you because
I'm a details person. So I'm like, well, so how do we get there?
How do we get there?
Yeah.
I'm like, girl, never mind the plan. It's going to happen.
Yeah. And I mean, also for women, though, there are so many times we want men to, read our minds.
Yes.
And so if we're feeling upset because he didn't get us X, Y, and Z for Mother's Day or didn't do something thoughtful for our birthday, he didn't know that you wanted X, Y, and Z or that you were hoping for this excursion or anything. Like they're not mind readers, you know, they're not looking around or walking around all day with pencil and notebook or watching over your shoulder, scrolling your Amazon cart or... you know, your internet feed to see what you're searching for. You know, we need to be able to openly share our dreams and hopes as well.
Yes, and that also means we also share our needs. What do you need? That is an important piece of emotional intimacy. You know, if you cannot express what you need to your partner in a way that your partner can understand, it becomes very hard for them to meet your needs.
Yeah.
Right. And I mean, everything from what do you need to eat? What you're going through a hard time at work or just in life. What do you need from me? What does support look like for you in this season? You have to be very, very clear about those things. And the moment you're clear about them, your partner is able to come alongside you and do life with you. And that builds emotional intimacy.
Yeah. Definitely.
You want to talk about the next one?
Sure. Spiritual intimacy is connecting through shared faith, prayer, purpose, and even our values as
Yes.
well, our belief systems. Yeah. And there are many people who don't share the same faith, who somehow are able to make their
Make life
marriage
happen.
work,
Yep.
but because they have very similar values, and they have their own strong faith in something
Yes.
that drives them forward.
And that is important to remember, because for us who grew up very religious in church world, even became leaders in church world, it is very easy for people in church world to think that those that do not share a religious or spiritual connection cannot have a good relationship or marriage. But we try and help people to understand that apart from what you term overtly spiritual, aka going to church, praying, religious and practices, etc., people can connect at the level of values, right? If you fundamentally believe in kindness, that is common ground. If you fundamentally believe in honesty and integrity, that is a place of agreement for you. So values can actually hold a relationship together. We
Yeah.
just happen to think that the spiritual connection for us involves that religious piece of it, because our personal relationships with God is important in how we connect with each other.
Right. For us, it was everything ran through that filter
Yes.
for us. And so if our filters were different, we were not always going to be aligned. And so that made it difficult. That can easily make it difficult for people whose filters, their spiritual filters, are different, especially if they're vastly different.
Yes. And purpose can also connect you, can also be that spiritual intimacy that you have. If you have a purpose beyond your relationship, meaning that you have a purpose that somehow contributes to humanity and allows you to be of some good in the world, and you are in agreement in terms of that thing, that can also be a very huge part to your spiritual intimacy, because we fundamentally believe that all of life is spiritual.
Yes.
It is.
And everything that we do and everything that we are has an impact, a spiritual impact. Again, that's because that's what we believe, but we're aligned in those
Yes.
values and in those beliefs. And so we are always on a path to wherever we are, wherever we find ourselves working, wherever we find ourselves living, those guide us, those values guide us.
Yes. And the third type of intimacy, which is very common to everybody and always is the definition for intimacy, is physical intimacy. This is affection, of course, sex, a non-sexual touch that builds connection, right? Affection for us is super important. And now that we have a son, almost 8 years old, one thing that I'm really proud of him is that he is a very affectionate young boy. That is because we are affectionate towards each other and affectionate towards him, and that is one of the things I hope he never loses as a man, because we live in a society where people think that masculinity should not be, quote unquote, emotional, or people shouldn't show affection readily, whether that is a kiss, a hug, whatever it is,
Right.
For us, that is super important. But coming back to the relationship affection.
I mean, even just an aside on that, he is only 7. He'll be 8 in the end of the year. But there is one particular friend who doesn't understand his affection, who doesn't
yes.
understand his affirming communication with him. And he's like, that's baffling to that child, which is sad to us, because it says, maybe we could assume from that child doesn't get a lot of affection or doesn't see it displayed in the home. But it says also that our son is misunderstood.
Yes.
Because he's loving and affectionate.
Yes. So emotional, spiritual, physical intimacy. And by the way, part of the physical intimacy is also non-sexual touch.
Yes.
Right? That is important. Holding hands. We still do hold hands. We hug each other, and doesn't have to be sexual at all. And we want our son to see that mom and dad are affectionate. towards each other. They're physically intimate with each other in that way.
Right. And that's a healthy relationship, that's normal.
Yes.
For people to hold hands, for people to give each other a hug when you haven't seen each other, a hug and a kiss, to say I love you frequently, and to hugs from behind that are not necessarily non-sexual touch, but all of it is helpful for children to develop a healthy view of sexuality.
Exactly. Now, what happens when you don't prioritize intimacy? And that is super important to kind of emphasize. Intimacy has to be prioritized. It will not just happen spontaneously or by accident. It is actions that you take on a daily basis that actually build towards intimacy. So what happens when you don't prioritize intimacy? Disconnection. Yeah.
Yeah. You
become roommates.
And honestly, it feels like you become the parents whose shared purpose is your child if you have children, or your shared purpose is the bills, instead of your marriage being your shared purpose, and your a healthy marriage and intimacy.
Yeah. And when you don't prioritize intimacy, also resentment replaces romance. Right?
Yes. Yeah.
Because there are so many things that are unspoken. There's no physical touch. There's no spiritual connection. There is basically living parallel lives. And because of that, maybe your partner wants intimacy in the relationship and you don't read the signals. And over time, that builds resentment instead of romance.
And doubt. Because, why is he out so late? Or where is he? Why is he not home yet? Or vice versa. Why is she gone so long? Does she not care about her family? Or, it's definitely leaves room for doubt and questioning about, your mind starts to think negative things.
Exactly. And that can
mistrust.
Yeah. And that can lead to conflict or just silence about what is making you uncomfortable. So instead of addressing the lack of intimacy, you go silent or you engage in unhealthy conflict. We do believe that conflict, it can be good and productive in a relationship, but when it is misdirected, when it is coming from a place of resentment, it causes injury and does not bring about the healing and resolution that you want. So when you don't prioritize intimacy, that conflict or silence grows.
And you develop a pattern of communication when you're angry, and it can become ugly, and it creates a lot of wounds.
Exactly. And then if you're also not intimate, temptations increase, because some needs go unmet. And so you start looking for affection from other places. You start looking for the emotional, physical, spiritual connection from another person other than the person you have committed your life to, because that intimacy is broken between the two of you, so that can certainly increase temptation. And conversations stay shallow, right? Yeah,
even when you're physically present. Again, you can start focusing on the children if you have children, or focus on the bills or something else that you have in common, and then the weather. The weather's a very common conversation with a lot of people who don't. What's the weather doing there at work? Like 5 minutes away from your work.
Exactly.
Instead of having real conversation.
Exactly. But conversely, if you prioritize intimacy, emotional safety increases. You become yourself, because there is a place. I always tell people that my home is a home of peace. Like if everything around me is going haywire, I know I can come home and find peace because it is my place of emotional safety, and we have deliberately created it that way,
Yeah, and we even, not that we don't come home and share negative things, but we set boundaries around even how we do that and for how long, and how we encourage each other in that communication as well.
Exactly. And arguments de-escalate quicker, right? Because you're not going to allow pettiness to come in between your intimacy. So whatever arguments you have de-escalate very, very quickly. And sex, of course, becomes meaningful and not just mechanical.
Yeah.
Who wants that anyway?
I mean, I asked somebody, a beloved friend a few years back, I'm like, how could you, because for me it's difficult if I don't have emotional intimacy to be sexually intimate. I said to her, how could you like continue having sex if you were on the verge of divorcing? And she's like, we were still attracted to each other, but I don't get that. Like for me, the emotional connection is so important that it turns me away from the desire to connect on a sexual level.
Yeah, because it feels fake. It feels like there's just a physical need that needs to be met. One, bam, thank you, ma'am.
And you're a tool to each other.
Yeah, and you're a tool to each other, And some people may be okay with that, but that is not real intimacy. That is basically friends with benefits at that point, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, if you continue prioritizing intimacy, you also feel closer and like a team. You're always on the same page. And for us, which is super important, God's presence becomes more evident in our connection.
Yeah, there's a divine purpose for you being together. And so, you think, wow, I never could have imagined for us, how our two lives came together was divinely orchestrated. But the more intimate we become, we see it even more powerfully.
Exactly. And we want to leave you today with basically 3 ways that you can build and prioritize your intimacy, even in busy seasons, because we always have those seasons in life where we feel like, do I even have time for the connection? Do I have the time for intimacy, right? So number 1, make room for presence, not just proximity.
Put the phones down.
Put the phones down. Yeah.
Sit face to face and ask, what's been weighing on you this week? What are you celebrating this week?
Exactly.
Things that are meaningful. What's impacting your heart and your mind?
Exactly. So it's one thing to be in the same room. That is proximity. Presence is I'm shutting out any other distractions and you are my focus. I'm fully present. I'm not thinking about my day unless you're bringing it up, wanting to know about it. I'm not thinking about the project that I need to complete at work because that is tomorrow. It's in the future. Right now, we're just connecting. We're right here. So we're making room for presence and not just proximity. And then secondly, create rituals of connection. And these are super important for us. The rituals of connection for us begin at the beginning of the day. When I leave home, because I'm the first one to leave home, I leave very early in the morning. I make sure that I go and say bye to my wife and son. So that means a kiss. I say good morning to them. If my son is up, I kiss him, give him a hug, and I leave. That starts off my day of connection with my family.
And then I drop Jojo off at school, and then I call Daddy, and then
yeah, because Daddy wants to know how the drop off was, and then we get to connect. Also, just having a conversation while she drives to work, and that is a ritual for us. And then we follow it up with, texts during the day.
Memes.
Or memes.
Say
hey. Hey, sexy. What's going on? Oh, I find something funny and I send it to her. I know she might be busy, but on her break, she might check it out. Those are all rituals of connection for us. Anything else?
And then at bedtime, we do have family ritual connections, so not everybody will do this, but we all go to bed. We all get in the bed at the same time. And so we pray together. Jojo gets some sort of reading and we pray together. There's quiet music. Sometimes there's funny reels.
Yes, Facebook reels.
Funny Facebook reels that we share and a laugh together, all 3 of us. Yeah. And so that is our family ritual that is very meaningful for Jojo.
Yes. And then for us, really, mommy and daddy time is on Fridays when we watch something together, and also just give us an opportunity to do a deep dive of just emotional connection if we want to. How's your week been? What is weighing on your mind? It's not formulaic for us. It just naturally flows at this point. And that doesn't mean that if something is weighing on you on Monday, you have to wait till Friday. But because we have built these rituals in our lives and created space for each other, we can easily engage emotionally at that level.
Yeah, and for us, our schedules are predictable. They're Monday through Friday work schedules. And so there's kind of like this natural relaxation that happens on a Friday. So we feel a little bit free to loosen the schedule, the evening schedule.
Exactly. Go to bed a little later.
And also let go of that to-do list for work and be able to focus on being present for each other.
Yeah. So for you, we just encourage you, create some rituals of connection, whether that is praying together, checking in emotionally at least once a week at a minimum. Choose a moment each day to affirm or appreciate each other. It can be at the beginning of the day, the end of the day, the middle of the day, but whatever it is, you just want to affirm each other, you know? Yeah.
I mean that's affirm and or encourage too, because sometimes I'm going to work and I know that I'm going into a day that could potentially be a little bit more difficult, a little bit more frustrating, and vice versa. And, you know, we say something like, you know, the favor of God is with you. The grace of God is with you. It's going to be a good day. And kind of just declaring a positive, a positive environment and atmosphere wherever we will step our foot.
Exactly. You know, and then thirdly, and I'll give you one bonus one, but number 3, don't wait for the mood. Create the atmosphere. All right, guys, let me talk to you guys for a second. Create the atmosphere. You know, don't just go in there wanting the physical connection and intimacy to happen. No, connect with your spouse at all levels. You know, if you want even the best sex in the world, man, you got to connect at all levels. You know what I'm saying? You can't just go for the physical intimacy. So light a candle, put on some music, dance, you know, be goofy.
Have a tickle fight.
Have a tickle fight, you know, whatever. Yeah, she loves tickle fights.
Apply lotion on each other. Yes. I do not like tickle fights.
You know?
Especially if I have to be quiet.
I know,
when
right?
our child is sleeping. But no, you know, a massage, applying lotion to each other's legs, tired legs, back, other places, you know, that's helpful for women to be able to relax and to engage in the act of sexual intimacy.
Yeah, dudes, come on, be the masseuse. You know, send a flirty text, you know, hey, just something that both of you can laugh at. You know, you want to speak words that spark connection. You know, I'm giving you the game right here, guys. Just pay attention.
I was looking at you, looking at me. And I was looking at you like, looking at me.
Looking at you.
Goofball. You know, it's anything. Or like interpreting everything on purpose.
Yes.
As a sexual advance, you know, to kind of let your wife, you know, that I'm in the mood, honey.
I'm in the mood. Hey. Hey, girl. All right. Then the last one, you want to talk about sex with grace, not guilt. Right. And I think this plays a lot into one of the podcasts that we talked about in terms of us, again, growing up in church world and how the church talked about sex. There was a lot of guilt and fear and shame around it. But change the way that you talk to each other about sexual intimacy, that physical intimacy. Speak with grace, not guilt. You know, it's not about pressure. It's about that mutual joy that you bring to each other.
And pleasure.
And pleasure, yes.
Mutual pleasure.
Yes, mutual joy and pleasure. All right? Okay. Do you have any last words for our friends before we go on?
I mean, intimacy is something that you will always be working on throughout all of your life, because it really does, in fact, require you to be present, to be mindful of another person and their needs and their desires, and to actively listen, whether they're using their words, their body language, or even if you are looking over their Amazon account.
Getting some ideas.
But it's something that is so precious of an example for your children as well, and those around you. If you can give that model of being intimate on every level, spiritually, emotionally, and physically. Well, obviously, we don't want people to see. We don't want people to be in the room with us for that spiritual, for that sexual connection, physical connection. But there's a non-sexual touch we talked about. Yes. Anyways, I digress. You have any final words? I just put my foot in my mouth on that one.
All right. So here's the final takeaway, friends. Intimacy is the soil where love grows. And without it, even good relationships die, they wither. And remember, it's not about perfection and getting everything right. It's about the pursuit. Because when you prioritize intimacy emotionally, physically, spiritually, your relationship becomes a place of rest, safety, desire, and joy. And I mean, there is nothing that beats that. And so pay attention to building intimacy deliberately. All right. And if you want to know more about intimacy or about how you can just better connect together, watch this next video and have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.